Welcome to Surrendering to the Signs. I'm your host, Laura Gates. In this podcast, we're interviewing everyday people like you and I who are trying to, as one of my mentors and teachers called, walk the mystical path with practical feet. On the practical side, I've been an executive coach, a team facilitator, and a guide to leaders at some of the world's largest global organizations. If I were able to go back in time and meet with my younger self, I would probably reassure her that all of the life lessons that were going to happen would, although feel maybe at sometimes painful or tragic or unbearable, that those were actually the moments of a turning point. And that without those turning points, life would not be as rich or as full. And I think actually that perhaps my destiny would not have been unlocked in the same way as it has over these last several decades. When we talk about this concept of spirituality, for me, it is this sense of both that there's a destiny for us, but also that we have a free will in that destiny. We make choices, we make decisions, sometimes thinking we're conscious in the moment and then realizing 10 years later that it was an unconscious decision. But this idea that the universe is trying to get our attention, trying to show us the way through signs, synchronicities. When I talk about surrendering to the signs, for me, it's this doorway into a larger collective consciousness, into a larger wisdom that perhaps in my day-to-day life I don't have access to. And those doorways, those portals to this larger consciousness can be through signs, synchronicities, dreams, moments in nature where we're just sitting in awe. And when people tell these stories of these otherworldly experiences, they're often very hard to put into words. Part of what I'm trying to shape in this podcast is helping us hear those stories and trying to put into words these concepts of spirituality, of connection, and of something larger pulling us forward in life, something almost cheering us on, if you will, to fulfill our destiny. So I welcome you here to listen to these stories, and hopefully they will inspire you on your own path.
All my life I was looking for a sign. Wasn't sure where to find a peace of mind. Sometimes you can see things when it ain't time. Well, for you I'll be putting it all aside.
My journey has taken me from transitions that I have gone through as someone who guides others through times of transition, as an executive coach, as a facilitator. Usually people show up when they are at some sort of an inflection or turning point in their lives, in their careers. And when I share my story, it sounds like there was some grand plan. To me, it feels like I just kept powering through, kept moving forward, trying to figure out why I'm here, what I'm here for. And as I have been on that quest for my own life's purpose, I then share with others what I have learned along the way. And so when I look at my career history, for example, from going from selling software for Citibank on Wall Street and then getting hired into Wall Street's management training program, completely, to me, felt accidental, to leaving that job and traveling South America for a year, having my own Eat, Pray, Love experience before Eat, Pray, Love, and then moving to California, starting a marketing business during the dot-com era, working with tech startups and women-owned businesses before anyone was working with those businesses, and going on to work in the Silicon Valley tech world as a coach and facilitator, really what I have seen is that a lot of times people really do know what they want. They'll come to the conversation and say, if I only could do what I really wanted to do, if I only knew what that was, if I only could live my purpose, live my passion. And then when I say to them, well, if you knew what that was, what would it look like? They often get very quiet and lean close and almost whisper the thing that they truly know that they want to do. We all kind of know it. We just often don't believe that it's possible or don't want to admit that it's possible. And so that's why I love this idea of the signs and the synchronicities. It's sort of like these little affirmations on the way of like, keep going. You're on the right track. And as we talk about in one of the interviews is if there are no signs, if there are no signals, maybe that's a time to pause. But what I find is when I'm really paying attention and listening and noticing, I'll get these little winks and nudges from the universe that I'm going in the right direction, even if it feels like I'm completely in the dark. So part of what my goal is with this podcast is to make people aware that these ways of communicating with the universe exist and hearing other people's examples of how it's taken them through illness, through death of a loved one, through their own illnesses, and these moments where we have these extraordinary turning points in life and an opportunity to choose a different path and how we're guided in that. That's what I'm interested in sharing. That's what I'm interested in teaching and helping others see that destiny that's mapped out for us. Part of what we're looking to do here is make the unconscious conscious, make us aware of the places where we are not completely in tune with our heart's desires, with our true wishes and dreams, or the wisdom of our body even. You know, someone was talking to me the other day about a challenge she was going through, and my whole body was completely in a state of stress. And I mentioned that to her at the end. She said, what would you do in this situation? I said, I would run. My whole body is in stress listening to your story. And she didn't even realize she was experiencing stress, and I was able to pick up that stress. I was coaching an executive at one point, and I said to him, I really hear your grief in what you're saying and how this is not unfolding the way you would have liked it. And he was just astounded that I named something that he didn't even know he had himself. The feeling of grief and sadness about a career situation. We don't often associate grief in the workplace. And so I think it's this idea of if we're tuning into our true feelings and we're tuning into the wisdom of the body and we're tuning into the signs and the synchronicities and our nighttime and daytime dreams, that there's real wisdom and guidance that's available to us right here and now. We don't have to climb to the top of a mountain and spend 10 years in a cave. And in fact, we don't have time for that these days. We have to address the world's urgent challenges and face the chaos and the overwhelm, not from a place of despair and resignation, but from a place of true excitement in a way of what is this an opportunity for? What are we here to create? What is my part in this incredible time that we're living in? What is my contribution? And I think there is a greater sense of urgency around this. I have more and more clients who are more interested in kind of leaning in and saying to me, well, this is all great. This executive coaching stuff is great. But like what I really want to figure out is what am I here for? What is my purpose? This is becoming more and more the predominant conversation. And I feel like the more we ask ourselves that question and the more we allow those answers, the more we tune into that wisdom, the more change will be facilitated for us. We just have to be willing to embrace it. I remember I was at the gym next to a friend on the treadmill, and she was telling me how unhappy she was with her work and wanted to leave her job, and was thinking about, what is the timeline for that and how soon could she leave. And the next day on the treadmill, she said that she had been given a package and let go. And I said, well, there you go. You were telling me yesterday that you wanted to move on, and you didn't even have to resign. They gave you an incredible opportunity to leave graciously. And she was so upset that she'd been fired. She had forgotten that she really kind of manifested it herself because it was her wish. And in my way of thinking, the universe lined up behind her to give her what she asked for and to give it to her in a generous financial package. So I always say, be careful what you ask for, not because it's a punishment, but because I truly think that the universe does want us to succeed and wants to give guidance, not that it's going to prevent us from suffering or failing. Quite the opposite, that those are points of inflection, points of learning, points of growth and development. And the more we can kind of dive into that journey and embrace that, the more is revealed to us. One of the concepts I've found very helpful in working with my clients and helping them decipher what are they here for, what's their purpose, what's their mission, is to think about this concept of the zone of genius, which I first read about in Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap. It's this idea that when we're in a state of flow, when we're doing the things that we are not only the things that we love, but that we're designed to do, that we're well suited to do, that life becomes more effortless, that we're more in a state of flow. And when we delegate or say no to the things that we're not good at, that helps us line up our time, our energy, and our efforts all in the same direction of this zone of genius. So when I work with my clients, there's 4 zones: zone of incompetence, zone of competence, zone of excellence, zone of genius. So the zone of incompetence are things that I'm not good at, usually things I don't like doing, and I should delegate them unless I want to learn to get better at them. Things that I'm competent at, but I still might want to outsource and delegate. I'm very competent at cooking, but once in a while I just want to go out to dinner and have someone else cook or pick up takeout food. So these are areas where we could spend our time and energy on them, but it's fairly easy often to outsource them to other people, and we should as much as we can. Then there's the zone of excellence, and this is where people often come to me as a coach, is they've kind of hit this ceiling of their excellent. They're really good at what they do. They get paid well for what they do. They get promoted for what they do, and they're excellent at it. But they feel a lack of enthusiasm. They feel a lack of a sense of purpose because they're not really tapping into their zone of genius. So they might be an excellent lawyer or an excellent accountant or an excellent engineer, but something's usually missing. And it's not that they're not doing those genius things at all in their work. There are often flashes of that and portions of that, but they get weighed down by feeling like they should do the things that they're incompetent at, or that even that they're competent at, but they also feel like they should keep being more excellent at the things that they're excellent at. And what I often advise my clients is, instead of being indispensable, can you make yourself dispensable? Can you start to outsource and delegate the things you're really good at, and instead make space for this idea of a zone of genius, even if you don't know what that is? Can you sit with a blank page? Can you take your journal to a different part of your home with a cup of coffee and see what emerges? And it's often astounding when people take the time to meander, to explore, to see to track their time, to track their energy, and notice, what gives them energy, what drains their energy, where do they get lost in time, where could they spend hours and hours and not even notice the time going by. That's this state of flow. And it's often surprising to them that the places that they actually can bring the most value are the places that they are in a state of flow most of the time. They just don't realize that they can have the permission, really, to give themselves time to be in that zone of genius, to embrace whatever that might look like. And for each person, it's different. One of the things I'm trying to illustrate with the interviews in this podcast, and this, we may get into this more in the second series, is what is my zone of genius? When am I in it? How do I know that? How do I identify that? What does that look like? So that I can spend more of my time in my zone of genius and less of my time in these other areas that often look more like shoulds than want tos. And I feel like part of my mission in life is to kind of wave my little fairy wand and say, you now have permission to do the thing you came here to do. It's almost like this door opens, and once that door opens and someone sees a glimpse of what's possible, then they just go on that path. The fear goes away, the doubt goes away, the mental back and forth, the should and shouldn't goes away. And so I think there's something really powerful about being open to other ways of living our lives, other possibilities for our lives. Where people get stuck is they feel like, this is my job, I have to do the same job till I retire, this is what I was trained in, this is what I was educated in, this is what I've invested my whole career in, this is what I paid all my student loans for, and then they're trapped. They're stuck in this corner of shoulds. And part of my quest as a coach is to unlock those shoulds and to help people see a different path, especially if they're feeling burnt out, frustrated, dissatisfied with the direction that their life and career is going. I mean, this is part of this world of materialism that is so caught up in, and I don't mean materialistic, I don't mean possessions, I mean this materialism world versus this other world we're talking about, the world of spirituality, the world of wisdom, the world of insight, the world of intuition that is not predicated on, a 9-to-5 job. So it's not to say, many of my clients keep the same job. They just approach it in a different way. They come at it with a completely different mindset that brings them so much more joy and satisfaction in the long run. What's risky to me and what's risky to you are very different. And I see this with people, both with risk and with their dreams. Like, people will say to me, I have this dream to do XYZ. And they just assume that everybody else has the same dream. And that's not at all the case. Everyone has different dreams, and they're all unique to us. And my encouragement is for people to really clearly identify what it is they truly want, this deep-seated dream, because we're almost taught that our dreams aren't real, our dreams aren't realistic, or, oh, you can't make a living that way. Think about kids who grew up playing video games. I know some of them whose parents were like, well, you can't make a living in video games. I mean, guess who's making a lot of money in video games these days, So it's really, when we talk about risk, or courage, people would say to me, oh my God, you quit your job and you moved to South America, and then you quit your job again and you moved across country, and then you just left California to go back to New York. Like, what a risk to walk away from some of the things you built in your career and move to a small town in central New York. That didn't feel like a risk to me. That felt like I didn't have a choice. I felt like I was being propelled forward. And I think also we forget the time things take. Like when I started looking at homes in central New York, right when COVID started, because I realized how far away my parents were and that they were aging and that I wanted to be closer. So what looks like a risk, what looks like a sudden action of selling my home and moving across country and buying a new home all within 30 days was years in the making, years in the making. So I think also from the outside, when someone takes a leap, we might think like, wow, they just dramatically changed their life, when in fact, it's something that they have been brewing and stewing and journaling about for years. Then we have things that are more dramatic, like my decision to go to South America. I think it was within 30 days that I decided I'm going to quit my job and leave everything behind and move out of my great rent-controlled New York City apartment and chuck it all, right? So, but that was a time when I was younger and I had less responsibilities and I had more freedom. Risk is relative, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. What might be risky to me and what is risky to you can be two very different things. I know people who say, well, just record that podcast, get it out there. I know someone who's launched her second podcast in the time that it's taken me to even do my first 10 episodes. But I had things to overcome. I had clarity to obtain. I had fears about being seen and being heard. I had understandings that had to show up. Just yesterday, I read a book that gave me a whole new understanding of what this podcast is all about that I hadn't even realized. And so I think the other challenge we have is that we often feel like we're behind, or we feel like we're left out, or we feel like we've missed the boat. I see this a lot, especially people who are in their 40s or 50s or 60s. They feel like it's too late, right? I've missed the opportunity. Life has gone by me. And I refuse to buy that. I feel like the 50s were some of my most productive years. I accomplished so much in my 50s. And, we're in a culture and in a society where we still have this kind of brainwash, if I may be so bold to say, of, retiring in our 60s and playing golf and going on cruises if we can afford that. And everyone's so freaked out that they can't afford it and that they're going to live under a bridge, that everyone's just scraping by to be able to retire, to be able to afford to retire. And we're not living our lives. We're not living our lives. And by the time we get there, we're so stressed and we're so sick and we're not able to live it because we've been working so hard to try to get there. This weekend was 4th of July. I read this really powerful book called The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller. Put a lot of things in place for me that I've been working on for decades. But I remembered that in July 4th, 2011, I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And that was such a revelation to me that we could decouple work from a paycheck. We could decouple work from a location. And even this idea of 1 hour of my time equals X value. And I think it's these moments of revelation of, wow, the life I've been living does not need to be the life that I'm going to live. And when I think about those risks, right, it's more of a social risk. It's more of a willingness to step out of the safety of what we know to be true of, you work every day of your life until you retire, and then you enjoy a few years if you're lucky, and then you die. As far as I know, the dying part is still pretty set in stone, but we have no idea when that's going to happen or how that's going to happen. And living in fear of dying, living to prepare for dying, living to prepare to be comfortable before we die is not truly living. And so for me, risks are about truly living, stepping out of our comfort zone, doing things that we don't know how to do yet, doing things that we don't feel like we're good at, and being willing to try new things and experiment in life. And it's the times that I've not done that. My biggest regrets are the times that I didn't take the risk. Whatever ridiculous reason that I didn't embrace the moment. Truly living is when we step out of that comfort zone and we do the thing we know we want to do, but that little part of our brain's like, don't do that. You're going to look ridiculous. Or what will people think of you? Or what will people say? That social conditioning that stops us. And often when I ask people, when people say, well, I can't do that. And I'll say, well, who told you that? Where's that voice coming from? And of course, it's always, some parental voice that limited us in our childhood, mostly to keep us safe and protected, but it's still running the show. And so less than actually facing a true risk, what we're facing is that inner voice, that inner dialogue that tells us, not to stick our neck out. I feel like part of my resistance to bring my spiritual self out of the closet into the world is because I feel like I've had this parallel life for many decades now. And Jerry, who I interview on this podcast, was one of the people that opened a door for me by inviting me to a spiritual retreat when she was my vice president at Citibank, who I worked for. And I feel like there's been this parallel path for all this time where I've studied with mystics and shamans and gone to all kinds of healers and classes and workshops around the world. These are journeys that I've gone on for my own spiritual exploration. And I felt like, I can't really bring that into the business world. I can't really talk about those experiences. And this book that I just read, The Awakened Brain, what the aha that I had was that it really doesn't matter what the tool is or what the process is. For some people, it's MDMA. For some people, it's ketamine therapy. But also for some people, it's classical music. I mean, we're going to hear Rude's story about how he healed himself partially from his cancer experience, and his journey was not just Western clinical medicine, but also listening to classical music and sitting amongst the trees. And there are many ways that we can connect with the divine. There are many ways that we can have a quote unquote spiritual experience that doesn't have to be out there and esoteric. I just happen to have chosen a lot of those different ways of learning and understanding for myself. So when we talk about risk and courageousness, for me, it's a risk to talk about these things in public. It's a risk to put out a podcast about spiritual subjects when I'm deeply entrenched in the corporate executive coaching world. But I feel compelled. I feel like there's no choice in the matter, because if I don't speak about these things, if I don't bring this to the forefront, if I don't have my clients and colleagues and friends tell their stories, I will feel something is missing for me. I will feel that I haven't truly lived the purpose that I'm here to live, which is to take these two sides of my life and start to bridge them and blend them and help people find that deeper meaning, that deeper exploration of our true purpose here on life beyond however many years we have to live here. I really believe that a huge catalyst in moving forward on this, because I've been, I wrote the ebook Surrendering to the Signs in 2011, 2012, and it's been on my website, kind of hidden. But losing my sister in October of 2022 was a huge catalyst. As painful and completely devastating as that was, it was also a catalyst to say, what are you waiting for, Laura? What are you waiting for? It's time.
It's all in our hands, this life of time that's given to us all. gathers round each night, each morn. We watch it pass and grow. It is all in our hands, it is all in our hands.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Surrendering to the Signs. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Also, feel free to hop on over to surrenderingtothesigns.com, where you can download our free e-guide with examples and your own workbook to help you identify your signs.
Where hope's not lost but found. It is all in our hands, it is all in our hands.
We look forward to seeing you on the next episode and wish you well.